The desire she tried to ignore didn't arrive loudly. It didn't demand attention or announce itself in obvious ways. It came quietly, settling into her thoughts when she least expected it, showing up in pauses, in silences, in moments that were supposed to mean nothing. At first, she brushed it off as distraction, as loneliness, as a passing thought she didn't need to take seriously. She told herself it would fade if she didn't feed it. She was used to being in control, used to knowing what she wanted and, more importantly, what she didn't. Desire to her had always been something intentional, something chosen. This was different. This felt unplanned, uninvited, and that made it uncomfortable. So she did what she always did when something felt inconvenient. She ignored it. She stayed busy. She filled her time with routines and responsibilities, convincing herself that focus was the same as peace. But desire doesn't disappear just because you refuse to look at it. It waits. It grows quieter, but heavier. It slipped into her awareness during ordinary moments while staring out of a window, while replaying conversations that lingered longer than they should, while feeling a strange pull she couldn't explain. She began to notice how certain thoughts returned no matter how many times she pushed them away, how her mind circled the same feeling again and again, as if asking her to finally pay attention. She questioned herself constantly. Why this? Why now? Why something she never asked for? She reminded herself of logic, of boundaries, of the life she had carefully structured. She told herself desire was unreliable, that it distorted judgment, that it led people to make choices they later regretted. And maybe that was true. But ignoring it was starting to feel like another kind of risk. There were moments when she almost gave in not to action, but to acknowledgement, moments when she allowed herself to admit, even briefly, that the desire was real. Those moments scared her the most, because once she admitted it, even silently, she couldn't unknow it. She couldn't return to the comfort of denial. And denial, she realized, had been protecting her from questions she wasn't ready to answer. The desire wasn't urgent. It didn't push her forward. It simply existed, steady and persistent. It made her more aware of herself, of what she felt, of what she missed, of parts of her she had set aside in favor of stability and predictability. She wondered when she had learned to treat wanting as something dangerous, when she had decided that feeling deeply was a liability instead of a sign of being alive. She tried to convince herself that ignoring it was the mature choice, that discipline meant silence, that strength meant restraint. But the more she ignored it, the more distant she felt from herself, as if she were living slightly off-center, performing a version of her life instead of inhabiting it. The desire wasn't asking to take over. It was asking to be seen. Late at night, when there was no one to impress and no role to play, she felt it most clearly. Not as longing, but as awareness. A quiet recognition that something inside her was awake. Something that wanted connection, meaning present. She realized then that desire wasn't the opposite of control. It was information. A signal pointing towards something she needed to understand. She didn't suddenly act on it. There was no dramatic shift, no impulsive decision. What changed was smaller, but deeper. She stopped judging herself for feeling it, stopped labeling it as wrong or inconvenient. She allowed it to exist without demanding that it lead anywhere. And in that allowance, something soft. The desire became less heavy once she stopped fighting it. It no longer felt like a threat. It felt like a part of her she had ignored for too long. A reminder that she was still capable of wanting, still capable of being moved by something intangible and unexpected. She didn't know what it meant yet, and she didn't rush to find out. What she understood, finally, was that ignoring desire doesn't make you safer, it just makes you less honest. And honesty, she realized, wasn't about acting on every feeling. It was about acknowledging what was real inside you, even when it complicated the story you told yourself. The desire she tried to ignore didn't change her life overnight, but it changed how she listened to herself. And that quiet shift, subtle, internal, undeniable, was something she could no longer pretend hadn't happened.